Hi guys, what is going on? And welcome back to another video on Conqueror's Blade. So today I want to be taking a look at the Zycalian Militia, or in better words, the Grenade Guys, from the new Season 5 patch. What a interesting, quite good looking, but largely useless unit. Real mixed feelings on these guys. And I can't say I've particularly enjoyed playing them, although they do have a certain fun factor to them, which I must admit I quite enjoy, but I'm not sure they're necessarily the most effective unit ever to come out of a seasonal unit challenge. So, firstly, kind of what are they all about? Well, they're basically a grenade unit. They lob a grenade, they sort of lob it, sort of 30 to 50 metres, depending on which veterancy line you go down. And it creates an explosion which does blunt damage, and then it causes a small amount of fire, so you can get a little bit of burn as well. And again, which veterancy line you pick determines how much fire and burn you get. So they probably are, well, they certainly are much more useful in group fights, in the sense of if you're throwing into a larger blob, it's kind of fairly useful. If you get 3 Prefecture Guard coming over after you, though, you're doomed, because these guys have absolutely zero melee ability, which is kind of a little bit of an issue, so you really have to keep them safe. There's only 12 of them, and they are very, very fragile. But I suppose you have to remember that they are only a 3-star unit, and they're only 165 leadership, so they're never going to be really amazing. The unit challenges to unlock them aren't generally too bad. There's only 4 sets of challenges. Let's have a little bit of a look at them. Only 4 sets of challenges, and I think you need 6 of each to finish. And you get a fair amount of things like these unit XP cards on the way. You get obviously the trial initially, followed by the permanent one. This obviously bumps up your level quite a bit, makes it quite easy to level this unit because they max out at level 16 anyway. And then finally you get a doctrine at the end, which is actually pretty useful because they are pretty short on ammunition, particularly if you go the top line. And yeah, this is kind of useful to have. So, what's good and what's bad about them? Well, let's actually have a look at probably the veterancy lines first. That's probably the easiest way of explaining what the two are about. So initially I went down the bottom line, and basically this has the effect of increasing their base blunt damage. So you're not really getting much burn. You actually do get a little, just a small amount, but not really very much. You get a little bit of burn damage from the explosion. But really, it's all about adding this 600 blunt damage. And because it's blunt damage, it basically ignores armor. So it basically means you're hitting for the full damage pretty much every time. So you get 600 plus the 300 base. Plus, in this case, I've put on a decent blunt damage doctrine. So you could get to 975. So basically, every shot lands and hits for 975. That means you can do basically 1,000 damage per throw over a very large area. So if you throw into a group, the amount of damage you apply is actually really quite high. And so that seemed the logical veterancy line for me to go down. Particularly as well, you're getting extra range bonuses. You get an extra 15 meters range. And when you consider these guys with the top line only have 30 meters range, it's really rather on the short side, and it's noticeably short. So I kind of felt the range increase was worth looking into as well. So anyway, we'll have a look at some clips on the bottom line. But since then, I decided, well, I like to try both veterancy lines out, particularly when there's any sort of contention over which one might be better. So I've since gone down the top line. This basically introduces burning in a lot more effectiveness. So ground is now set alight for 3 seconds. Burn damage increased by 24%, which is kind of handy. Another 3 seconds, that's 6 seconds of ground burn now, as well as some increased movement speed stuff and an extra burning duration on the final version. So that means you're getting like 8 seconds of burn duration, really quite a long time, particularly when you're throwing 12 grenades into a cluster. You end up doing quite a lot of damage. And so I've found this top veterancy line to be significantly more effective than the bottom, despite my initial feelings that the bottom would probably have been better because of that much higher base blunt damage. The burn, particularly with the revised burn mechanics now, so that everyone burns basically and people have burn resistance, it makes it a lot more effective. And with the cooldown between each throw, you can basically keep the ground permanently alight, and so therefore that units that are normally fire resistant, by the time you've thrown the second grenade, they burn quite easily. So yeah, it kind of makes things quite much more effective. So definitely top line is the way to go. In terms of doctrines, pretty basic stuff. Obviously gone for the ammunition one. I threw in a slightly a rarer blunt doctrine. Probably not really worth it. We'll probably end up taking it off and putting just a green one back on, to be honest. I'll end up using Lotus Water. I also throw in a unit damage. Just a piercing defense, pretty pointless, to be honest. And the health. The health's probably more useful. Piercing defense really is a bit pointless when you've only got 3,700 hit points and 370 piercing defense. Not going to make much difference all in all, is it? But anyway, let's hop into some battles. We'll probably start off on this veterancy line, and then we'll have a little look at a clip from the bottom veterancy line. So top veterancy line with all the burn damage first. I'm sure some people are going to end up arguing that you can actually have really good games with these guys, because their damage is actually quite high. And it's not that I disagree with that. You can occasionally do well and get good games, but it's very hard, or at least I'm finding it very hard, to be consistent with them, because it's such a fragile unit with such short range and such few models in the unit. It just becomes so easy to lose the unit, and that's quite unfortunately very hard to get consistent with them. I find I can be much more consistent with, say, a unit of Condottieri, which is an equivalent tier and leadership cost to this unit, and that's kind of my issue with them. Consistency. But I mean, as you can see from this, the actual damage is really high. The flame damage is nice, and when you hit into a large cluster, you just burn absolutely tons of stuff, which is really awesome. I mean, as you see, we've managed to get almost 20 kills, already. And you can see the amount of bleed damage you do. Look at the ticks going on, and you can see them bleed. Anyone stood in that hellfire just gets a ton of damage. And that is a really nice thing about them. And when you can find these larger fights, I mean, Kirk Castle is actually quite a good one for this, because they can throw down into that middle. But look at all the bleed damage on those Serics. You can still, even now, seconds after, you can still see the bleed going on. And so you're applying quite a large amount of damage, even if you're not always securing the kills, because you're applying that consistent burn damage over large areas and larger numbers of units. So anyway, I was quite pleased with that as a start. Thought, okay, well, let's get the unit back over to the supply point, see if we can get healed up. Unfortunately, the enemy team actually starts to drive us back a little bit, try and just deal with this longsword, and our Imperial Pikes, I think, are going to go on the advance in a minute. So I'm just trying to drive those guys back along with this maul. Unfortunate that we kind of lost our holding position on the top of that little plateau, because that was quite a nice one once we got up there. It's much better for me to be able to get my grenades up there and throw down into the sort of the ditch beneath. Here comes the Imperial Pike advance, and my unit's now resupplied, so I've called them back up. Because their ammo count is actually really low, it's like 50 or 60 bombs or something, it means that they resupply almost instantly upon touching a supply point. And like, say, a unit of archers with a couple of thousand arrows, then it takes quite a long time to resupply. So the resupply is actually very, very quick. So with that, I'm starting to push back up. We seem to be getting sort of some vague semblance of a push moving again. So I'm thinking, okay, come on, Evo, let's get ourselves moving, see if we can get some more grenade kills. Looks like we've got this unit of Prefecture Guard coming up. So this seemed to be the obvious target. A little bit close, but we do manage to get quite a few of the grenades to hit, and you can see, again, quite a chunk of burn damage. Even when we don't necessarily catch all the kills initially, the Hellfire burns for quite a long time and deals quite a long-term amount of damage. And again, as we go in, and unfortunately, what a disappointment, managed to roll myself off the wall. What an idiot. But somehow, the only lucky thing of that was I somehow managed to just tap X before I hit the ground and actually get the unit to deploy on the ground down below. So actually we only ended up losing 3 models of the unit. Although, when you've only got 12 models to begin with, it doesn't take much. You only have to make a small mistake like that and, you've lost like 25% of your unit. So that was a bit of a blow. But I'm going to come back to life, and I'm going to try and respawn with them again, because I felt the 9 was still enough to make a difference, and I think we'd actually done a reasonable amount of damage so far, and actually pushed pretty hard with them, and contributed a reasonable amount trying to burn such a large number of enemy units. So, coming back in. And this is why I think the top line is better, because, you're getting that burn damage over so many people, and that damage applied over sort of 5 seconds is really much higher, even if you're losing out on that sort of 600 extra initial blunt damage. So we're coming on up. Initially can't quite get away up the tower. Get this longsword. Was thinking, no, leave my unit alone. Thankfully, we managed to get a grip on his CC, and yeah, it goes down pretty fast. So now we start to play a bit of a risky game. There's quite a few enemy people to hit there, but look at the casualties we take as soon as we pop out, because there's enemy range down there. But look at the bleed damage. Look at that bleed. How many kills we start to rack up. So that is really one of the benefits of. And I was thinking, well, a lot of them are damaged now. Up to 47 kills. If we can keep that damage up, then we're going to be able to do a lot here. Unfortunately, again, more casualties. And that's one of the issues, because this unit is so fragile. If you get hit by anything from heroes to even low tier range units, you end up taking a lot of casualties very quickly. And unfortunately, now we're down to 3 units. A lot of our potential here is gone. Do get a bit of a couple of throws out here. See, one of them hits the siege tower, even though it wasn't really actually that near to his grenade. And that is definitely one of the problems with them, is that they're very collide with objects. But one thing you'll notice here is I'd already died, but I did just press V just to see if the unit will auto-attack, and they actually throw their grenades on auto-attack, which was kind of cool. So they do have that potential to attack even after you've died with the V, which is kind of cool because something javelins don't actually do, and they work in a similar way. So that was the top line. Works quite well. That burn is really, really nice. So these units are now fighting with the bottom veterancy line. So you do get two benefits from the bottom line. Much higher base damage, so if you actually look at the hits, you'll see they're hitting for around about that 1,000 mark, which is nice. I mean, don't get me wrong, that is pretty decent damage when they actually land to hits, but you unfortunately don't really get very much of the fire damage. And when you're fighting in these group fights like this, I think fire damage is really what gets you the kills and is what really does the higher amounts of damage, because you're burning large numbers of people. I mean, not to mention the fact that actually when you, now with the fire changes, when you consistently hit and burn a unit that has fire resistance, eventually it ends up catching on fire. And when that unit catches on fire, it stops fighting. It no longer is fighting because, well, understandably, it's burning to death. It's in a little bit of a shocking situation, so it stops fighting and ends up standing around on fire. That is hugely effective in large fights like that, and that can really sort of win or lose fights. So that's why I think the top line is better for that part. The other benefit of the bottom line is the extra range. The range is quite a bit longer, it is quite a bit nicer. To be able to throw further, it means you can just be that little bit further towards the back, a little bit more out of harm's way, because, as I've said kind of multiple times already, this unit is very fragile, and kind of by staying that little bit further back, you can keep yourself a little bit further alive. No, got kidnapped. So, that kind of really sums up my thoughts on them so far. Not an amazing unit. Certainly can have the moments, and they are quite fun. I do have quite a lot of fun playing these guys, but really there are better units for the tier. They're not a game-changing unit. If you're going to get them, I would go for the top veterancy line. The burn is better. Yeah, burn everyone. Much better. Other than that, I would stick with something like Condottieri. I think I can do much better in my warband with a unit of Condottieri than I can with these guys. But anyway, hopefully you've kind of enjoyed my thoughts on them. Do let me know what you think about them in the comments down below. They're certainly an interesting unit. Have you had a lot of success with them? Have you discovered something perhaps I haven't? So yeah, so do let me know in the comments down below. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. And yeah, I shall see you all on the next one, which should hopefully be a bit of an update on the glaive. So thanks for watching, guys, and I shall see you all on the next video. Into position.